Hey guys, welcome to an episode of Off This Thing, an off-the-cuff monologue where we kick around ideas without much of a script. I'm going to warn you right now, this one could get long, so buckle up. Today we're going to talk about self-interest. We're going to talk about it in light of Kim Jong-un, in light of the tensions between North Korea and the United States. Some of the ideas we're going to be kicking around here have roots in a Hobbesian philosophy known as realism or political realism. If you want to read more about it, there's this cool thing called the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It is a peer-reviewed source. You can use it to kind of get a nice taste of what Hobbesian philosophy is, what realism is, without having to dive into the entirety of Hobbes's works like Leviathan or something like that, which is really huge. So feel free to make use of that resource. I would encourage it. But anyway, let's dive on in. When we're talking about self-interest, I think there's like three kind of main ground rules that I kind of live by or that I look at when I consider self-interest. Number one, everyone acts in self-interest. That can be good, it can be bad. The heroin junkie on the corner shooting up heroin is acting out of their own best self-interest. They're like, this is what I need now. It is in my best self-interest to quench this craving. The person who works in a toxic work environment,
hostile work environment,
and hates their job is going to work because of their own self-interests in paying the rent. They believe in that self-interest of having a living spot more than the comfort of staying home or calling in sick or what have you. Now, I know there's kind of a counter argument in here of what about selflessness? My response to that is there's no such thing in a pure form. Every selfless thing we do has a positive kickback in our mind, for our psyche, for our conscience, for our ego. If we go and we give money to a homeless person, or if we help a single mother with groceries, especially around the holiday, or if we go help orphans in Mexico, we feel good about ourselves because we know we did a good thing. It is impossible to separate the good feelings about the good things that we've done from our decision-making matrix. So even when we go out to say, hey, I'm going to go do this selfless thing, it's like, yeah, you're going to feel good about that. You're going to get some sort of a kickback from it. Even if it's not fully intentional, it's still going to happen. So again, number one, everyone acts in self-interest. Number two, self-interest does not look like what you think it looks like. It does not need to make sense to you. It does not need to be logical to you.
I don't think this boy's got all his marbles.
It only needs to be logical in the mind of the person making decisions about what their self-interests are. They can totally be under a delusion and still act in their own self-interest, at least as they perceive it. Again, we go back to our heroin junkie example where we say, my gosh, it's in your self-interest to check into rehab. They don't see it that way. And that's very difficult because it's, we're addressing some of the contradictions that are apparent in self-interest. And it's like, yes, humans are full of contradictions and self-interest makes this very apparent. Number three, self-interest is demonstrated by actions which are based on decisions made from information available at the time. It assumes that other actors and that one's own self are reading a situation a certain way and that they are going to act a certain way based on certain actions. In other words, we make decisions based on predictors of future behavior as we understand them. Now, where does the rubber meet the road on this? Let's use an example of Saddam Hussein. In 1990, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. I remember this. I was very young at the time, but I remember hearing about it on the radio, seeing it on the news. And Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait because he really did think it was in his best interest and in the best interest of his country. He acted completely in self-interest. Everyone acts in self-interest. Well, he invaded Kuwait out of self-interest. Number two, self-interest doesn't look like what you think it looks like. Well, it certainly didn't if you look at Saddam's life. He made a lot of decisions that led up to a point where he is standing on a gallows with a rope around his neck. And it's like, dude, I think you made a wrong turn somewhere.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
We look at a post 9/11 world and we go, man, America's trigger happy. Why would you want to antagonize the United States? Why would you want to kick out weapons inspectors? Why would you do any of these things that are not in your self-interest? And for whatever reason, Saddam's mentality, his delusion, led him to make decisions that had huge costs for him, that were not in his self-interest. The ends certainly weren't. And if you were to talk to the Saddam on the gallows, he would have a few words to say for his 1990 self about where his self-interests truly lay.
You don't
know what you're doing.
Now, we can also look at Kim Jong-un and say something similar. Kim Jong-un really does believe it's in his best interest to threaten the United States. And I see responses to like Styx's video and I see responses in articles and op-eds and stuff like that. It would be crazy if he tried to attack us. That's just insanity. His decision-making process does not have to be logical to us. In fact, it can be just completely crazy. If he launches a missile at Guam, at Hawaii, at San Francisco, what we believe is logical is utterly irrelevant. There's a missile in the air. Now you're dealing with hard reality. You're dealing with very little response time, and you're dealing with, hopefully, a missile defense system that works. It does not matter if the retaliation would completely destroy North Korea. If Kim Jong-un thinks they can weather the storm, that's all that matters. Kim Jong-un, conversely, has several hundreds of thousands of people, political dissidents, Christians, and so on, starving to death, eating rats and feces in concentration camps. Do you think his decision-making matrix considers humanity at all? And that's why this is so scary. He can do something that can have huge costs for his people. All that matters is, what does he feel is in the realm of his best interest to cement his power, his glory, his might, his legacy as supreme dictator for life over North Korea. That's all that really matters, because that's going to determine whether or not he launches missiles. If he thinks launching a missile is in his best interest, he'll do it, because his best interest has not maybe correctly factored outcomes and responses from other nations, or has underestimated them. Anyway, I hope this gives you some ideas. I hope these things aren't too heady or too weird, or it was too rambly. And I hope it explains a little bit of kind of realism and how the world is viewed in that way. And I hope it kind of explains how I view the world after kind of thinking about some of these things for a little while. Go ahead, leave a comment if you'd like, share it with your friends, whatever. And as always, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it.